The late President of Tanzania, John Magufuli, may now have been buried, but as much as he was in life, he continues to be present in most Tanzanians' lives as they reflect on his complex legacy. Many would say that he left behind a nation divided in its memory of a leader who was both revered and loathed by some. Tanzania's High Commissioner to South Africa, retired Major General Gaudence Salim Milanzi, spoke to us, remembering Magufuli as a man who did so much for his country, particularly the poor. I would imagine that Tanzania is still in mourning at this time.
Yes, indeed, it is still in mourning. Most of the Tanzanians received this sad news with the shock of the unexpected death of beloved President John Magufuli. And this was announced, the death announced was done by the Vice President at that time, and who was actually on the tour of the region. And yes, we are still in mourning. We're there 21 days, and we still have 7 more days to go. We definitely miss him. Many Tanzanians will miss him. And as you can see, this has been evidenced by the way he was seen off, by many people almost everywhere that he has been, the body was sent, I think in Zanzibar, Dar es Salaam, Dodoma, where we also had the leaders from the region, and they paid really a glowing tribute to our beloved president. So yes, we are still in mourning, and we'll definitely miss him. Yes, but now we are looking forward. Now it's time people now have to agree that he is no more, and we are looking forward now to a new era. We now have the new president, we have the new vice president, and the country now is also looking forward.
Your Excellency, at this time, people spend quite a bit of time looking at his legacy and thinking about what he contributed, what he left behind. What would you say is President Magufuli's legacy?
I think one of the legacy which is generally accepted here is the question of accountability. There's been a lot of complaints before him that there was lack of accountability among the public servants, and but actually when he came, that's one thing that he tried to address with his very famous slogan of Hapa Kazi too, which insisted on actually more on accountability and work. But also that sense of pride. If there's one thing that he had succeeded and him, and which is also left among many people, is that sense of pride of being Tanzanian, or being an African. And he was not apologetic about being African or Tanzania. And he has instilled that one among most of the Tanzanians, and I'm sure that one will still be there for a long time to come. But also in the question of faith, he believed in God, a God-fearing person. This is one thing, and actually this one also brought a lot of religious tolerance. Before that there was a lot of misunderstanding between different religions, but now that one is no longer there. It's possible now to see, for instance, people of different religion sharing the same platform. That was not before. But also the whole question of love for the poor. If there was one thing that he did, was actually his love for the poor. He always stood for the oppressed people, and of course that has also been the cornerstone of even the Tanzania domestic policy over the years. You always stand for the oppressed, and he continued doing that. but also the whole question of smooth transition. Over the years, Tanzania has actually enjoyed a very smooth transition between one leadership to another. And you can actually see how even now there's been a very smooth transition after his death to the current president, Her Excellency Mama Samia Suluhu Hassan. I think in a nutshell, those are the issues. Of course, there is also the issue of confidence. Yeah, he really injected that sense of confidence that we should feel that we are not poor. We have so many resources. If it's well managed, we can do it. So I think this, in a nutshell, these are the issues. I'm sure they'll still their big legacy from the late president.
A lot of the things that you described talk about the way people think, believe, attitudes, feelings. I just wonder if the life of the ordinary Tanzanian was improved practically. So what physical things do you think that you can point to say he did this and people's lives were better as a result?
I think there are a number of things that ordinary Tanzanians, because I talked about the poor, ordinary Tanzanians would actually point out and feel that, yes, I think the late President Magufuli did for them. One is actually on the economic advancement. He is one of the president who had most of his policies were people-centered. And you can actually see there's been a lot of improvement and in the lives of people. You go to the village now, the access to water is actually improved, is very well improved. Electricity, you see, in the past, you go to the village, you find there is no electricity, and actually people would want to go to town because there was so much disparity between villages and the towns. That has really touched the lives of many. So I'm talking of his program about rural electrification, water, health. There are more than 1,800 health centers which has been built during this time. These are the issues where ordinary people, and especially even ordinary people, would very much remember him, because most of his program actually aimed at the ordinary people.
Some would say that his leadership was autocratic and heavy-handed at times. What do you say to people who accuse him of being almost like a dictator?
No, I don't think he was autocratic or even heavy-handed. As you have said, some of these could be those activists. And if you have an activist who also has the ambition for political power, I think I can see that's the kind of language that he would say. But let me say he was not autocratic. Of course, he had a style of leadership and which was actually admired by many people, especially Tanzanians. Of course, a little bit forceful, especially if he feels that is good and is for the benefit of the people. Yes, you could have some of those people who are not non-performing people, though who thought business would be as usual, must have a lot of hard time. But he was not really autocratic. And as I said, is someone who always stood for the poor. And I'm sure he did not like people who oppressed the poor. Those kind of people would always say that he was autocratic. But I can assure you, he was not autocratic. Of course, he had a little bit, he had a style of leadership, which is a little bit, in a positive way, forceful, when he feels that he's doing it for the good of the people, but not autocratic, not even heavy handedness as some people want to portray.
Human rights groups say that people were abducted and some even killed during his time. Again, what explanation can you offer to this? Because again, these aren't opposition leaders saying this, these are human rights groups.
Let me say the human record, the security in general during his tenure was very excellent. It was very good. People remember that before he came to power, there are a lot of what you would call security issues or human rights issues. I mean, things like armed robbery, things like hijacking of buses, daylight raid of the banks were a commonplace. And even the former president before him, President Kikwete, has been dealing with this problem. You know, there was a time people used to live in fear. You see, buses were not traveling at night, even. And in there are some places where it was actually you had groups of people who were terrorizing people. So it was only after he came that, oh, these are things of the past. We no longer see, we see buses now flying at night. It was not that time, it was not that before. We don't see much of those armed robbery. Those places where there were some of the elements of terrorist activities where people were killing each other, that was also very well addressed by him. So it's not really, and these are the real human rights issues, security rights issues, and he did that. But of course, you can, despite all these notable achievements, there could be some isolated cases of one or two, I think, armed robbery or abduction. But these are isolated cases of which are being dealt by the police, and these are common anywhere. But those which were rampant as before, I think those were very well addressed by the late president. So it's not really, and in anything, there's nothing that can be attributed directly to him, that he was maybe responsible for ordering something, you see, and these are common issues, I think, in any place where these isolated cases. Yeah.
Things that can be attributed to him directly was the way he dealt with the media, because he did curtail some of the media activities and tried to restrict them. What was he trying to achieve with that?
I don't know, when you talk about curtailing the media, because we see in Tanzania, there is both independent and state-owned media. They are there, all of them, you see, and all of them are free to report. The newspapers, radio stations, independent, and those which are state-owned. We actually even have blogs and online forum. They are not blocked. And they will be surprised by the type of news that one finds in these blogs, you see. There is a lot, you see, and if you read some of the blogs on Tanzania or written here, you'll be surprised and agree that maybe the country, the government has been very tolerant, you see. There's been a lot of abuse and misuse of these platforms, and actually not even seen anywhere. So freedom, yes, there was a freedom, but freedom sometimes not to the extent of causing division to others or even causing chaos, you see. And there is some type, or even some of the programs. Some of the programs are closely monitored. They have to be in line with our African culture, religious culture. But to say that they've been curtailed, and you can actually see even during the election, there was a lot of campaign. People were very free to campaign. So it's I don't see that much freedom. And let's not see only on newspapers. Let's even go to those blogs, online platforms. You see how free actually people are in airing their views.
The other accusation was that under him, democracy came under attack, that the opposition parties and activists were treated again with a heavy hand, harassed, political gatherings sometimes banned when it wasn't election season. What do you say to that?
No, I would say there's been a lot of discussion on democracy. I know we actually mean the Western democracy, but let me say one of the basic tenets of democracy is election. And in Tanzania, regular elections have been conducted. Regular election during and this is enshrined in the constitution. And all the political parties have attended. And the late president has actually been in the forefront to make sure that the elections are held. And even the last election, if we really didn't want democracy, he would have stopped that election on the pretext, say, of COVID. There are a lot of people who were saying, no, we shouldn't have election because of COVID. But he was the one who was actually in the forefront to make sure that, no, this election, because it's a democratic right of every citizen to make sure that they do participate, it will take place. And then it took place, and we saw most people actually coming, others from outside, actually, and the electoral process was properly followed. Voters' education was carried out, voters' registration campaign, and the peaceful voting. So, and even the smooth transition. So I don't really agree that was during his time, democracy was much under attack, because we could have actually seen that one during election, of which he really wanted the election to take place.
In choosing Samia Hassan Suluhu as his vice president, I guess he saw a woman who could be president if he wasn't there. She has now ascended to that post. Why do you think that this was a person that he thought could lead the country one day?
No, because she's really a very capable lady. She was his running mate as the vice president during the first phase, and then now the second phase. And at once, she really he admitted himself. She said, actually, she's a very hardworking lady, and who has performed well as the vice president during the first phase. So she chose someone who could really. She's a presidential material, and one who can actually take over after he has left. So, like most of Tanzanians, they are very confident and have very high expectations that during her presidency, no doubt the country will be propelled to even greater heights during the president. So yes, he chose, very much believing in her, that she would at one time become the president. And that's what the Constitution actually says. Whoever the vice president is likely also to take over times like what we experienced. Yeah.
You've painted a very glowing picture of the late president, and I just wonder if maybe you can admit that as far as COVID-19 was concerned, he perhaps could have done better, because he was leaving a lot in the hands of God. Some would even call him a denialist. And now we see what's being described as the most mutated version of COVID-19 in your country. Could this be one of the things that may be a blemish on his legacy?
No, I think one is the issue of the mutative the mutative version, as you call that one. I think is not. I'm not sure whether that is a proven case. One, and I don't know what President Magufuli could have done, because one is it's not that he left everything in God. What he said was this: depending on, in addition to everything that will be done, you should also not leave God aside, and that's what that's what he did. And in fact, in the first place, during the first time, what he said, okay, only that he was not for lockdown, and but the rest, I think, were followed. All the other non-pharmaceutical kind of measures were followed until that first time, until at a stage where we thought that was over. Like in most other countries actually thought that first wave, when it passed, we thought that was over. And just like the country, we thought we were already out of the wood. But well, we're now talking of a second wave. And in fact, what he did during when the second wave came, he also encouraged people, yes, to follow what the health sectors are saying about taking care of the protecting themselves. So I'm sure it is time, and you know, we are passing at the time when there's still a lot of unknown in the COVID. And it's not only in Tanzania, but I think throughout the world, there's still a lot of unknown about this one. We are not sure. No one is really sure. And no one can claim victory at this time. So like Tanzania, I think we still had the first time, which we thought we are over, we thought we were succeeded. Then we came the second wave. But him, I think he continued insisting that no, we should take precautions, but we should also be, we should try to take precautions as much as possible, but also not forgetting God and the other traditional therapies, of which actually worked during the first time.
Okay, and perhaps in conclusion, what would you say, a final thought, a final memory that sticks out for you that perhaps defines him as a man?
I mean, what defines him as a man, and which most people would really remember him. He was a God-fearing person, deeply religious, God-fearing, who never missed churches wherever he was. And surely beneath what people saw as very stern face, he was actually a very humble person with a very good sense of humor. Most people would remember whenever during his speeches, it used to leave people in stitches. He loved sports. He was a family man with his 7 children. And because of his humble beginning, a very down-to-earth man, he identified himself very much with the poor. And I think he's trying to identify himself much with the poor. That really is because of his beginning. And he is someone who stood very fearlessly with whatever he believed. And he has left us very good lessons, I think, in terms of the pride as an African, the Tanzanian as African, religious tolerance, resilience, never to give up, and always to stay focused with what one would want to achieve. Yeah. So this is really what I would define him in a nutshell.